This is the second video for your marriage rug, long overdue. There are probably 3 rugs that I won't make very often. One is this with the tongues. The other is this one, the Grandmother's Flower Garden with the small pennies, and these with the double dyed pennies. The reason is, with the tongues, you either hold it in your hand or you put it over the roll. With these, they are stitched before you attach to the base, and I don't like to do that. I don't like to hold things in my hand and stitch, so I don't very often do those types of rugs. They just are not something that I enjoy doing, and they're few and far between. And so with the marriage rug, I have done a plaid rug to show how to do it. The first step was to do your tongues, to do the blanket stitch. And you'll notice that your tongues are different colors, so you will need to stack all of the same colors in together, because that is what makes the aged look of the rug. What you do is you do one from one stack of color, then you would do another one, and then you would do another one. So you would change the color. You would not put 2, 3, 4 of the same type of color and fabric together. So once you have your tongue stitched, the next thing to do is to use your tissue paper layout and to mark the guidelines where you attach your tongues, and we will do that in the next segment. This is the first start of the plaid tongue rug, and there will be a few kits of this depending on how many kits I can get out of the one dye pot. I had to dye the wool anyway, so I did a pot, and you'll notice that each plaid is different. And how to do that is, first, I should tell you first, I've said a yard of fabric. If you don't have a yard of fabric, this will be the last row in the plaid rug. There's only going to be 2 rows. The marriage rug has 3 rows. So you need to make sure that your fabric is this much. So for this plaid rug, you would need that much of your fabric. So if you happen to have a piece of old fabric and you're not sure if it will work, that's your guideline. Your last row of tongues, your fabric should come to the edge, and that way you have plenty of room. If anything goes astray, then you just turn it under. So your fabric shouldn't be shown on the front. So that's your guideline if you have old fabric and you would like to use it. So the first thing you do with your fabric is you find the center. And I'll just pretend I have my center marked. Here, probably here. You would use your tissue paper pattern and it is marked on the center here, and the center here. So you would cut this like so, and you would tape this together. This is for the plaid rug because it only has 2 rows. This is for the marriage rug, and it has 3 rows. This is what your marriage rug template would be like. So you do the center, you transfer these lines to your base fabric, and you would find your center. We'll just pretend that these are together. You'd find your center, and I just pin, and then I use a needle and thread in a contrast color. I've used green here so it's easy to see, and I stitch through my tissue paper. Then you just pull the tissue paper off, and you have your guidelines for your tongues. The first row goes on your first green stitching. I don't know if you can see that. There's my green stitching. The first row goes on that first oval, but they overlap. And they overlap, which is why I sent a sample tongue. They overlap the width of the blanket stitch so that you don't see 2 blanket stitches. It looks as though it's just one, and it overlaps this way. Very easy to do. I just pin it. It's a little tricky on the sides, and that's where I'm going to show you how to do that in the next segment. So I have started to pin the tongues. I start on the top, somewhere around the middle, and I just pin and overlap, overlap, overlap. And see if I can get this down close so that you can see. I've just pinned my first row of tongues back, and you'll notice this one is starting to do the curve. So then we will, instead of going like this, because that's too much of an opening, we need to make the opening as close to this one as possible. So that looks good. Pins. This is really the only part that's a bit tricky in these rugs, is the turning. The same with this one, and you just have to judge. Try to keep it close to the green line. See? And that, I'm going to go a little bit closer. You may need to adjust these once you have them pinned. If you're doing the next row and you find that you have an opening where you can see the bottom of your tongue or something like that, you may have to adjust. But this one is only 2 rows, so we're going to be fine on this one. Close to the green, a little bit in, I'd say. Or something like that. Maybe I'll move this one in a little bit more. These can always be adjusted later before you stitch them. But usually on your turns, you're going somewhere near close to the half as you do your turn. That doesn't, oh there, that's not done. I do not like these tongue rugs. There. And you'll notice that's up quite a bit. You want to be careful of that too, because we may need to adjust that when we open up these pennies. and you would just continue on. Looks good. Be careful that when you pin they don't move, just like mine did. That one. Put that one a little closer. And we're soon turned. As you go around this part of the turn, you'll notice that they need to be very close here. And this is what you're going by as far as your turning. You need those to be quite even. That one may not be, that may need to be adjusted. On that one. And now we're back on the straight part. And you just continue with the straight as you did up here. And in the next segment, we'll check to see if these work out. We'll do these and see if they work out. So I have now pinned, made my circle, my tongues here, come across and finish them here, and now I'm ready to do my last few tongues, and this is where you will need to, I'm missing one tongue, this is where you will need to sort of work them in and space them so that they work. Have them evenly spaced. Oh my. Be very careful that they always go the same way. So you need to try and just judge those a bit and work them in. Pull them a little bit together so that they all look evenly spaced and they all fit nicely around the green stitching marks. So that looks quite good. This one maybe is a little off. And now we will test them to see if they're going to work with the first row. And I will take the pins out and then we will see what happens in the next segment. So I have them pinned, and now I'm looking for placement. And you'll notice down below they do not go even. They go and they're off-centered, a bit off-centered. These should be changed because they're going even. Even, even, even. A little bit off-centered, and this one's off-centered. So I'm going to need to adjust those. And then I will look at how they turn. And this is what you need. You need your top row to cover this part. This is when you will put your stars on in your embroidery, but it needs to cover, and quite a bit. So that will be tacked there, so that's good. So you need to make sure that these are all placed good. This one seems to be going this way, so I would just adjust this a bit, straighten it up when you're looking at it this way. The same with that one. And then I will need to adjust these to get rid of the two going here, because it needs to be over this way, and they need to be off-centered. So I will work that out and come back in the next segment. So I have adjusted the top. They're now off-centered, and I just moved them closer together, and I needed to add another tongue. And if you notice on the bottom row, this one is coming close. So this one, these need to be adjusted, and this one. It's just a matter of either making them a bit wider or making them a bit tighter, perhaps tighter on your, when you do the curve. So I will adjust that. The next thing that we do is stitch the pennies down. Once you have them in the right place, you see this one needs to be in here a bit more. It's almost not touching, so this one I will adjust. You keep your pennies, and I would suggest that you use, I'm only using one stick pin. I would suggest you put a stick pin this way, straighten them up, and when you find you have them where you want, you put one this way, and then you put one up and down. But I just keep the edge on the line, and I go through with, I'm actually using just a regular thread, and I will go through and just do a small running stitch to hold those in place. Make your thread the same color as your lining, so the stitches are not too visible. And that is the next step. With the marriage rug, you would do the first row, this would be the second row, and you would have another stitching line, and you would do the third row of tongues. And then once that's complete, we go to doing the either the applique of your names or the star stitch. And when we do that, we need the pennies open, because you're going to attach your one penny to the other one, and you're not going through on the back of your fabric. And we also need to do a little stay stitch with your matching thread, so these are tacked down and they don't move, because you will see inside. So I will go through and stitch this last row, and then we will do the feather star stitch, and that will be in the next video.